We left off in the last video with FHSS, or frequency hopping spread spectrum. Let's take on the next one. These are all in order, by the way, of when they were invented. So the next is DSSS, or direct sequence spread spectrum. By the way, it followed rather closely with FHSS. The idea of this one is a little bit odd when you first look at it. You don't really understand why it helps anything, but it does, it turns out. And I'll try to explain why as best I can. What we do is we take each bit. For example, here is a 1. And instead of just transmitting a 1, I turn it into a code. I encode it, and that encoding actually makes 11 bits. And so I'm going to transmit 11 bits instead of 1 bit, all that represent this 1. Now, how in the world does that help? It seems like it would be 11 times slower than if I just transmitted the 1 to start with. Well, it turns out there's two reasons why that's not true. There are two reasons why it's actually faster. One is that because of this encoding, the receiver, even if this is not received correctly, even if it ends up, if some of these are corrupt, there's enough information that it can figure out that that was a 1 without having to retransmit. So it cuts down on a lot of retransmission, and that is particularly helpful in long-range stuff, because it turns out the farther away you get from the central device, from the wireless router or the wireless access point, the more retransmission goes on. That's why it appears slower and slower as you get farther and farther away. Well, as you get a long ways away, those retransmissions then get cut way back, and so that is really helpful. The other nice thing about this is you can transmit, say, this 1 at one frequency and this 0 at another frequency, and so you're spreading them out. That's why we call it spread spectrum again, because you're transmitting them across multiple frequencies, and so I can transmit many of these at the same time this way. So that is direct sequence spread spectrum, and it turns out that it actually is faster than FHSS and more secure. OFDM is the next one. A little bit tough to describe, but I'll do my best. Orthogonal, this is where people get tripped up on what in the world orthogonal means. If you're a chess player, you might think that a bishop travels diagonally, but a rook travels orthogonally. In other words, it can't go diagonally, it can only go up and down or back and forth. That's orthogonal. Next to each other is what it means. Well, we have the same concept, or I should say a similar concept here with waves. And so let me try to explain what's going on here. Here I've got different frequencies. If you look at these, you would determine, even though it looks like all these peaks are happening in the same place, and in fact they are happening in the same place, but the frequency of these things is all different. In other words, the red one, the green one, the purple one, and the blue one are all different frequencies, and that's why you see, for example, that this purple one peaks here, whereas the blue one peaks earlier. They don't all peak at the same time, because these are different frequencies, but they are orthogonal in that they all come together at this neutral point right here. So I can get these various harmonics, if you will. If you play a string on the piano or a guitar, you're actually hearing multiple frequencies, because you're hearing the overall vibration of that string, and then you're hearing these sub vibrations of the two halves of the string, and sub vibrations, even more sub vibrations at each of the 4 quarters of the string. And so you're getting several different frequencies all occurring, and that's part of what gives it the sound that it has. That's what's going on here, is you're getting all these harmonics going on, and they all come together at the same time. That means that I can transmit on each of these, and they won't interfere with each other. Now, normally, if I transmit on 2 different frequencies, there will be times that the peaks amplify things, and there will be times that the peaks and the valleys will cancel each other. So I'll get very intermittent transmissions. But because these all come together here at the same places, it means that there won't be that interference. Peaks will only occur where peaks are, and valleys will only occur where valleys are, and nothing in between. I know, again, that's a little bit difficult to describe, but we think of these, by the way, of each of these as a sub-channel. So we're actually doing multiple channels. Now, notice that this does not say SS. It's not OFSS. It's orthogonal frequency division multiplexing, because really this belongs to another class of technologies called multiplexing. But we put it in spread spectrum because it kind of works like spread spectrum in that we are indeed spreading out over multiple frequencies, and so you can think of it as spread spectrum. Multiplexing is a whole nother story. All right, we're going to cut this one off here, and we'll take up the antenna technologies next time.